Hello everyone. Subscribe to the channel to get more videos. Also, let us know in the comments what city you are watching from. Now let's begin this one. It was a cold morning in late October, the kind of chill that seemed to seep through your bones. I'd already packed the last of my things into the back of the old, rusted delivery van. Everything I needed, which didn't take much. A few clothes, a couple of old photos, and a box of odds and ends that used to belong to me, or at least, I thought they did. The rest was already gone. Gone with her. Gone with them. The people who had always kept me at arm's length, who'd pulled the rug from under me without even realizing it. My name is Art. I'm 38 years old. I live in a small town now, not that anyone would know it. I slammed the back door of the van shut and slid into the driver's seat. The engine sputtered before coming to life with a whine, and I eased out of the driveway, watching my old house shrink in the rearview mirror. Everything I'd built had crumbled. It wasn't just the business, our business, that I'd helped grow. No, it was my life. My family. The life I thought we had. The lies that had been buried beneath the surface for too long. I had always tried to ignore the cracks, or at least fill them in, but there was no way around it anymore. I knew it as soon as I found out. As soon as I saw the paternity test in the envelope my wife had left behind. She lied. My wife, Emma. She'd been the love of my life, or so I thought. She and I had built this thing together, this family, this empire. But what I had failed to see was how far her betrayal stretched, how deep the web had been spun. Her youngest son wasn't even mine. The little boy I'd raised, the one who called me Dad, with that innocent smile that made me think the world was right, wasn't even mine. It was probably my brother-in-law's. And that stung like a punch to the gut. I didn't even know what to feel anymore. Anger, disbelief, pain, a mix of all of them. The discovery was the final straw. The sealed envelope with the test results was still sitting in the passenger seat next to me. The thought of confronting Emma, of trying to fix things, was laughable. I couldn't fix something that was never real. The hardest part wasn't finding out. No, that part was easy. The hardest part was realizing that everyone else had known. My in-laws, Emma's parents, hell, even some of her friends probably. They'd been complicit in this elaborate ruse, this lie that I'd somehow missed. The insurance policy I found, the one that was linked to a huge payout, was the final clue that tipped the scale. It wasn't just infidelity. It was calculated. It was planned. I quietly separated from Emma. Didn't even tell her. I didn't need to. The paperwork was filed. I liquidated everything. The house, the business, the land. The small amount I had left, barely enough to keep me going, was mine. And I wasn't looking back. By the time Emma found out, it was too late. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about her or her manipulative family. I drove, the road ahead endless and empty, like my future. I didn't have a destination in mind, not really. I just needed to go, to leave behind the mess that had been my life. I drove all night, pushing myself to the limit, until I stumbled upon this tiny little town by a lake. It was barely on the map, but something about it called to me. I stopped in front of the rundown marina. It was a mess. Decades of neglect had rotted away the docks. The bait shop looked like it hadn't been opened in years, and the faded for sale sign looked like it had been slapped up hastily. I didn't know why, but I found myself walking up to the door. "I'll take it," I told the realtor when she finally answered the door. "Are you sure? It's a lot of work." "The place is practically falling apart," she said, looking me up and down. "Perfect. That's what I need," I muttered, handing over the cash without hesitation. And just like that, I was the owner of a decaying marina in a dead-end town. It wasn't much, but it was all I had left. A chance to start fresh. A chance to rebuild something real. Something that was mine. Something that didn't come with a history of betrayal. I stared out at the still, empty lake, a quiet calm settling over me. It had only been a couple of months, but already I could feel the weight of my past lifting off my shoulders, piece by piece. The marina was the first step, and I wasn't planning to stop there. The first few weeks were rough. The marina was a disaster. The docks were rotted, the bait shop smelled like mold and mildew, and the small diner next door had been abandoned for what looked like decades. The only thing that still worked was the old neon sign outside, flickering weakly, "Cafe by the lake," like it was trying its best to hold on. But I liked it. The decay felt familiar, almost comforting. It mirrored where I was, broken, a bit run down, but still here. I spent most of my days picking up trash, hauling away debris, and trying to patch things up. There were no big changes yet, just the basics, keeping the place from falling apart while I figured out what to do with it. Slowly, I started fixing things one by one. The marina needed new docks, but I could only afford to rebuild the most critical parts. The shop? It would take time, but I could make it work. One morning, after another long day of scrubbing the floors of the diner, I sat down in one of the empty booths. The sun was barely up, the lake still dark and glassy. It was peaceful, but the silence was almost too much. I'd never been this alone. Just as I started to lose myself in the calm, a voice broke through. "Hey, you're Art, right?" I turned, startled. A woman in her late 20s, wearing a pair of black boots and a work shirt, was standing by the counter. She had short, messy hair and a tired look in her eyes, but there was something in her posture that said she was used to getting things done. "Yeah, that's me," I said, standing up. "Can I help you with something?" "Actually, I think you can help me," she said, stepping closer. "I heard you bought this place. You planning on doing anything with it?" "Yeah, eventually." I gestured to the diner. "It's a work in progress." She glanced around, taking in the worn booths and the faded menu board behind the counter. She didn't look impressed, but then again, I wasn't exactly offering a 5-star experience. "I heard you're looking for someone to run this place. Thought I might be a good fit." I raised an eyebrow. "You looking for a job?" "Yeah," she shrugged. "I used to wait tables at a diner up in Pine Ridge. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. I know how to keep people happy." I looked her over for a second, taking in the steady, confident way she spoke. There was something about her. Maybe it was the no-nonsense attitude, or maybe it was the fact that she didn't seem to care much for the state of the place. Either way, I liked her immediately. "I'm not exactly offering much right now," I said, leaning against the counter. "Place is a mess, and I can't promise anything fancy. But if you're up for some hard work, I could use the help." She smiled, a small but real grin. "I don't need anything fancy. Just a paycheck and a roof over my head. That's all I'm asking for." "All right," I said. "Name's Art, like I said. And you are?" "Riley." She held out her hand. "Nice to meet you." We shook hands, and just like that, I had my first employee. It wasn't much, but I figured it was a start. Riley showed up the next morning, bright and early, ready to get to work. I could tell she wasn't thrilled about the state of the place, but she didn't complain. Instead, she dove in, sweeping the floors and scrubbing down the tables with a focus I hadn't expected. The place was still a wreck, but with her here, it felt like maybe I wasn't the only one who cared. We spent the next couple of weeks working together, me fixing the docks and her cleaning the diner. There wasn't much time for talking at first. We were both too busy just trying to survive. But slowly, things started to improve. I rebuilt the dock and started pulling in a handful of boats. Riley painted the walls, cleaned the windows, and gave the place a fresh coat of paint. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. A lot better. By the end of the month, the diner had a rhythm to it. It wasn't busy yet, but the few customers we got seemed to enjoy it. I could hear them chatting with Riley, laughing over their coffee. They'd always stop by to tell her what a nice place this was, how they were glad it was finally open again. It wasn't the kind of business that drew a crowd, but it had potential. I could feel it. I started to notice the small things too, like how the town's locals would stop by, slowly getting curious about the place. At first, they'd stare at the marina from across the street, but soon enough, they'd wander in to ask questions. Some of them had seen the old marina for years, and they were glad to see someone was finally trying to bring it back to life. One night, after closing up, Riley and I sat at one of the booths, both of us exhausted but oddly content. "Do you think it'll work?" she asked, looking out the window toward the empty marina. "Yeah," I said. "I think it'll work." And for the first time in a long while, I actually believed it. It wasn't just the town coming back to life, it was me, too. I was rebuilding, not just the marina, but myself. Maybe that was all I needed after everything that had happened. The next morning, when I opened the diner's door to the sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt a shift. This place wasn't just some pit stop, it was my new life. And I wasn't going to let anything or anyone ruin it. A couple of weeks later, the early morning crowd started to get a little bigger. Regulars came by for coffee, anglers talked about their catch of the day, and Riley and I settled into a steady rhythm. She ran the diner while I managed the marina. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. One Saturday night, after closing, I was sitting at the bar, nursing a cold beer, when the door swung open. A woman walked in tall, striking, with long dark hair and a confident, easy smile. She didn't look like she belonged here. She looked like she belonged somewhere far more exciting, like one of those places I used to dream about. Hey, you're Art, right? She asked, glancing around. Yeah, I said, standing up. Can I help you with something? She smiled again, looking me up and down like she was sizing me up, but not in a judgmental way, more like she was trying to figure me out. Actually, yeah. I heard you're the guy who bought this place. That's me, I said with a grin. Well, she said, her voice lowering just a little, I need a favor. And just like that, the quiet of this sleepy lake town was shattered by the ghosts of my past. The woman's name was Sarah. She introduced herself with a sharp, practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She wasn't from around here, obviously, but she seemed familiar. I couldn't quite place her, but something about her presence made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I've heard about you, she said, sliding onto the bar stool across from me. Her gaze was steady, almost piercing. You've really turned this place around. I gave her a tight smile. I'm trying. Good for you, she said, her tone smooth. But there was something else in it, something calculated. The marina's a good spot, but I'm not here to talk about your business. She paused, taking in the quiet hum of the diner. The last few customers had filtered out for the evening, and Riley was cleaning the counter, giving us the space we needed. The dim lights flickered in time with the occasional car driving by. I need to talk to you about Emma, she said, her words dropping like stones in the otherwise peaceful night. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to hear anything about Emma. Not from her. Not from anyone. But I didn't show it. I just raised an eyebrow, trying to stay cool. Emma? What about her? Her twin sister is dying, Sarah said bluntly. She asked me to find you. She wants peace before it's too late. I felt the ground shift beneath me, like someone had just pulled the rug from under my feet. I'd heard rumors about Emma's sister, Lily, but I didn't expect to hear anything about her now. And certainly not in this way. Is that so? I asked, my voice flat. I had no real connection to Lily. She'd been part of the family for years, but after everything that had gone down, I didn't care about her, or Emma, for that matter. Sarah leaned in slightly, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. She's been asking about you. Wants to apologize. Wants to make things right before it's too late. The words hung there for a second. There it was. That word, apologize. It made me sick, like some dirty rag was being draped over my emotions. No, it wasn't enough. Not even close. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I don't need an apology. She gave me a look that said she understood more than I wanted her to. No, you don't. But Emma does. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Emma doesn't get to fix this. Not now. Not after everything. Sarah didn't flinch. She just sat there, calm and composed. You know, Art, she said, her voice low, I thought I could just show up, tell you the story, and walk away. But I get the feeling you've been carrying something heavier than you let on. I stared at her, trying to figure out what kind of game she was playing. What do you want from me? Sarah's eyes softened, just for a moment. I don't know. Maybe you don't need anything from me. But Emma? She's still your family. You might want to think about that before it's too late for her too. I stood up quickly, my chair scraping against the floor with a screech. I had to get away from this. The conversation felt like quicksand, slowly pulling me back into a place I thought I'd left behind. Look, I'm done with all that, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. I've already done what I needed to do. I'm not going back. Sarah didn't seem fazed by my outburst. She just nodded slowly. I understand. But I think you'll change your mind. And when you do. Emma's waiting. Yeah, well, I muttered, pushing the door open to leave. She can wait forever. The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside, but it didn't do much to cool the fire that was suddenly burning inside me. I walked to my van, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I couldn't shake the thought of Emma, of the betrayal, of the lies that had twisted my life into a knot I still couldn't untangle. And now, her sister had the nerve to show up and ask for peace? I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. But there was a seed of doubt being planted, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it stayed there. What if there was something more to this? What if I didn't have all the answers? I started the engine and drove, the headlights cutting through the empty road as the town blurred in the rearview. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from the past, away from Sarah, away from everything I had spent months trying to forget. But the harder I tried to outrun it, the more I realized, no matter how far I went, I couldn't escape it. And that thought gnawed at me as I drove into the night. The next morning, I barely slept. I kept tossing and turning, the images of Emma and her sister flashing through my mind, along with Sarah's words about peace and apologies. I wasn't sure what to think. The whole thing felt like another manipulation, another game to play with me, but the nagging voice in my head wouldn't let it go. I sat at the counter in the diner that morning, sipping coffee, trying to clear my mind. The usual early morning crowd trickled in, but it was quiet. Riley was behind the counter, prepping for the breakfast rush, a steady stream of customers filtering through the door. The low hum of chatter was almost soothing. I wasn't looking for a distraction when the door opened, but that's exactly what I got. A man stepped inside, his long coat trailing behind him. He looked like someone out of a movie, a little too polished for this small town, with dark hair that fell into place with effortless style. His eyes scanned the room, and for a moment, they locked onto mine. "Art?" he asked, his voice low but steady. I felt my stomach tighten. Something about the way he said my name told me this wasn't just another random visitor. "That's me," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" He walked over, his polished shoes tapping lightly on the wooden floor as he approached the counter. "You Art Harper, the owner of the marina?" "Yeah," I said, setting down my coffee mug. My gut told me this wasn't a friendly visit. "Who's asking?" He flashed me a professional smile, but there was something calculating in his eyes, like he wasn't quite done with whatever mission had brought him here. "Name's Alex. I'm a private investigator." He paused for effect, watching me carefully. "I'm married to your eldest daughter." The words hit like a freight train. My breath caught in my throat. I'd heard from Emma about the kids, the way everything had unraveled, but I hadn't spoken to them in months, not since I left. "Excuse me," I stammered, trying to wrap my mind around what he just said. "I know this is unexpected," Alex said, taking a seat across from me without waiting for an invitation. "But I thank you, and I need to have a conversation." He glanced at Riley, who was now watching us from behind the counter, clearly intrigued by the newcomer. "This might take a while." I sat back, trying to piece together the fragments of what was happening. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. "How do you know about me?" Alex didn't answer right away. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, then leaned forward slightly. "I'm investigating a case involving life insurance fraud. You might have heard about the situation, but I'd like to confirm a few things with you, particularly about the policy your wife's family took out years ago." My stomach churned. A life insurance fraud case? This was going from bad to worse, and I could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral, but I couldn't stop the suspicion that flickered behind my words. "I think you do," Alex said quietly, leaning in just a little more. "See, your wife, Emma, she wasn't the only one involved. The evidence points to her family. And to you, indirectly. I'm not here to drag you into this, but it's something you need to know. This is bigger than you think." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. I had always known there was something off about Emma's family. The way they moved behind the scenes, how everything always felt a little too perfect, too controlled. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "Why are you telling me this?" Alex's eyes softened just for a second. "I think you can help me with my investigation. You might not know it, but you're already caught up in this mess. And whether you want to or not, I think it's time you face it." I stared at him, my mind racing. This was bigger than just Emma's betrayal. It was something much darker, and I could feel the truth of it settling in, pulling at my gut like a heavy anchor. "I don't have time for this," I said, standing up abruptly. "I'm not getting dragged back into this. I've cut my ties with that family. I'm starting fresh." Alex remained seated, not fazed by my outburst. "I understand. I really do. But I'm not the only one looking into this. And I think you'll want to know how deep this goes before it's too late." The weight of his words lingered in the air. My gut told me he wasn't lying, but I didn't want to face it. Not now. Not after everything I'd worked so hard to leave behind. I looked at him, a mix of anger and confusion burning in my chest. "What are you asking of me?" "Just that you don't run," Alex said, his voice calm. "Listen to what I have to say. That's all I'm asking for now." Riley had finished cleaning up behind the counter and stood watching us, waiting for some sign that she should get involved. I shook my head, signaling her to stay out of it. "I'm not a part of whatever mess you're talking about," I said, my voice firm. "Maybe not directly," Alex replied, standing up and leaving a card on the counter. "But you'll find out soon enough. Call me when you're ready to face the truth." I didn't say anything else as he turned and walked out of the diner. The door closed behind him with a soft chime, and the stillness of the room felt suffocating. I stared at the card in front of me, my fingers brushing the edges. His name, his number, the weight of his words. The truth. He was right. It was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. The past wasn't done with me, and now it was coming back to collect its debt. The following days felt like they were moving in slow motion. The realization that I wasn't as free as I'd thought kept circling in my mind like a dark cloud. The conversation with Alex, his warning, had stirred something I wasn't ready to face. I thought I'd escaped my past when I left Emma and everything that came with her. But the truth? It had a way of following you. And now it was knocking on my door. I spent the next couple of nights at the marina, trying to bury myself in work, as though that would make it all go away. Riley kept asking if I was okay, but I always brushed her off with some excuse about needing to get the place ready for the summer rush. She didn't push, but I could tell she was concerned. It was a Thursday evening when Riley sat down across from me at the counter, her eyes unwavering. She'd already locked up for the night, and the dull glow of the neon lights outside reflected off the empty diner tables. For a moment, I thought I'd been imagining the concern in her gaze, but it was real. She was worried. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to push her away. "You've been avoiding this," she said softly, her voice calm but insistent. "The whole reason you came here was to start fresh. But you can't run forever. Eventually, it catches up to you." I sighed, running my hands through my hair. It wasn't that I didn't know what she was saying. It was the simple fact that I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't want to get involved in whatever mess was waiting for me on the other side of that door. "Riley," I began, but I wasn't sure how to explain. How could I tell her the truth? The deep, tangled mess that had become my life? She didn't interrupt, just waited for me to find the words. "Emma's family. They're connected to something dark. I don't know all the details, but I'm not stupid. Something's off, and it's pulling me back into it." Riley nodded, her expression thoughtful. She didn't ask for more details, which I appreciated. She could see the weight of it without needing all the answers. "You're not the same guy who came here, Art," she said after a long pause. "You've made a life for yourself here. You built something real, and I think you should hang on to that." I took a deep breath, feeling a knot loosen in my chest. I don't want to get pulled back into the past. I worked too hard to leave it behind. But I don't know if I can just ignore this, whatever it is. Riley leaned in, her voice quiet but firm. "You don't have to face it alone, you know. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The sincerity in her words took me by surprise. It wasn't the kind of support I was used to. People didn't just stand by you when things got hard. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. But Riley? She was different. I couldn't deny the fact that I needed her, in some way I couldn't explain. The truth was that for the first time in years, I felt like maybe there was something worth fighting for again. "Thanks, Riley," I said, my voice a little rough. "I don't know what's coming next, but if I have to deal with it, I want to do it on my terms, not theirs." She smiled, a small, knowing smile that made me feel like I wasn't as lost as I thought I was. That's all anyone can do. Just take it one step at a time. The next few days passed in a blur. I couldn't avoid it forever. I knew that. The investigation that Alex had mentioned was still gnawing at the back of my mind, and despite my best efforts to stay busy, I couldn't push the feeling that something big was coming. It was a Monday morning when everything changed. Riley had already opened the diner, and I was just getting out of the van, preparing for another long day of repairs. As soon as I stepped inside, Riley handed me a message. It was from Alex. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Please meet me at the old warehouse near the docks. There's something you need to see." I looked at Riley, the message in my hand, and then back at her. Her face was unreadable, but I could see the worry flicker in her eyes. "You going?" she asked, her voice quiet. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I think it's time I find out what this is all about." The warehouse was only a few miles from the marina, but it felt like a world away. It was quiet, deserted, the rusted metal siding creaking in the wind like a skeleton left to decay. I parked the van and stepped out, the air thick with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Alex was waiting inside, standing by the large loading dock doors, his posture stiff, like he was ready for something to go down. "Glad you could make it," he said, his voice lower than usual, with a hint of urgency. "There's something you need to see." I followed him inside, the cold concrete floor beneath my boots echoing in the vast, empty space. A few industrial lights hung overhead, casting long shadows across the room. On the far wall, a table was covered with papers, photos, and a few open file folders. It looked like something out of a detective show, too clean, too organized. Alex gestured for me to sit. "We've been looking into your wife's family. Specifically, her brother, and his involvement in a larger operation. This isn't just about your marriage. It's about the money, the fraud, and the potential for even more. I sat down slowly, feeling a growing sense of disbelief. What kind of operation? He didn't answer right away, instead pulling a few photos from one of the files and sliding them toward me. You need to see this first. I looked down at the pictures. Emma's brother, the man who I had always suspected was up to something. But there was more. The people in the photos were unfamiliar, but their faces were sharp with the kind of intensity you only saw in criminals. One photo showed Emma's brother shaking hands with a man who looked too polished for the scene. The other photos were worse, evidence of money transfers, documents linking them to a series of illegal deals. This goes deeper than you think, Alex said, his voice quiet but firm. Your wife's family, they've been using you, Art. They've been setting you up for years, hiding behind the facade of family. The walls of the warehouse seemed to close in around me as I processed the weight of his words. So what's the plan now? Alex leaned forward. Now, we take them down. Together. But I need your help. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. For the first time since I found out about Emma's betrayal, I felt like I had some control. Like I wasn't just a victim in all this. All right, I said, my voice steady. Let's do it. But I'm doing this on my terms. No more secrets. No more games. Alex nodded, his expression serious. I thought you'd say that. As we moved to the next part of the plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much darker. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what was coming. I was ready. The morning of the confrontation felt different. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't shake, like the calm before a storm. I had known this day was coming for a while. Hell, I'd been running from it for months, years, really. But today, I wasn't running. Today, I was walking into the heart of the storm, and I didn't care if it tore me apart. I left the marina early, the cool morning air biting at my skin as I drove toward the town. It was the same route I'd taken countless times before, but today it felt unfamiliar. It felt like everything was about to change. When I got to Riley's place, she was waiting for me, her face unreadable. She didn't ask any questions. She just handed me a mug of coffee, the smell of it grounding me, pulling me back to reality for a second. You sure about this? She asked, her voice soft but carrying the weight of everything we had talked about over the past few weeks. I nodded. I have to be. If I don't do this now, I'll always wonder what I could have done differently. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she just gave me a look that said everything I needed to know. I'm here, whatever happens. I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the coffee spread through me as I steeled myself for what was to come. The drive to my old house was long, the road stretching ahead of me like the path I had chosen to take, the path that led straight into the past. I hadn't been back since I left, and as I approached the familiar street, the house loomed up in front of me like a reminder of everything I'd lost. I parked across the street, the place where I used to park when I'd come home late, when I dropped everything for Emma, for our family. I could see the lights on in the house, the blinds drawn, as if they were already waiting for me. I wasn't ready for what I was about to face, but I didn't have a choice. This had been years in the making. When I stepped out of the van and made my way to the front door, I wasn't sure what I expected. Would Emma be there? Would her family be there? Would they pretend like nothing ever happened? But when I rang the doorbell, it wasn't Emma who answered. It was Lily, the twin sister I barely knew. The one who had been nothing but a ghost in my life for all these years. The one who Emma had kept hidden from me, tucked away in the corners of her stories. But now, here she was, standing in front of me like an unexpected twist in a story I never thought I'd have to finish. Art. Her voice was steady, but there was a coolness to it that I didn't expect. She didn't smile, didn't acknowledge me with the warmth I had hoped for. It was just business. Lily, I said, feeling a wave of confusion. What was I supposed to say to her? Was she even here for the same reason I was? I know why you're here, she said, her eyes flickering over my shoulder, probably checking if anyone else was around. Come inside. We need to talk. I followed her inside, the air thick with unspoken words. The house felt different. It felt empty, like no one had lived here for years, even though everything was perfectly maintained. It was as if they had turned it into a museum of what we used to be. We went to the living room, where Emma's family was waiting for me. My stomach dropped when I saw them all sitting there, Emma's parents, her brother, the people who had caused this mess. They all looked at me like I was an intruder, and for a moment, I wondered if they had been planning this all along. Take a seat, Art, Emma's mother said, her voice clipped. We have a lot to discuss. I didn't sit. Instead, I stood there, staring at them, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. For years, I had put them on a pedestal, believing that they were my family, that they cared about me. But now, all I felt was betrayal. I don't know what you think is going to happen here, I said, my voice steady but my fists clenched at my sides, but you're not going to manipulate me anymore. Not after everything. Lily took a seat on the couch, her eyes never leaving me. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and there was something about her demeanor that made my skin crawl. She didn't look like someone who had just been told her sister was dying. She looked like someone who had been planning this for a long time. I'm not here to manipulate you, Lily said softly. I'm here to give you a chance to fix things. Fix what? I demanded, my voice rising. There's nothing to fix. You've all lied to me. You've played me for a fool. You don't understand the whole picture, Emma's father said, speaking up for the first time. His voice was smooth, like he was trying to talk me down from a ledge. This wasn't about you, Art. This was about family. Family. I spat the word out, the bitter taste of it lingering on my tongue. You think I'm part of this family after everything? You think I don't know how you've been using me? Lily stood up, her calm exterior cracking for the first time. This isn't just about money, Art. You think it is, but it's not. It's about protecting Emma, about making sure she's safe. Safe. I echoed. You call what you did to me safe? You destroyed my life. You tried to set me up for something I didn't even know was coming. I turned to Emma's mother. You knew, didn't you? You knew everything and still let this happen. Her face flushed, but she didn't answer. The silence that followed was deafening. They had nothing left to say. I turned back to Lily, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I'm done. I'm done with all of you. Lily's expression softened, just for a moment, before she spoke. I know you're angry, Art. But if you walk out that door, you'll never get the chance to fix it. Fix it. I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping me. There's nothing left to fix. I turned and walked toward the door. As my hand gripped the knob, I heard Lily call out, her voice quiet but desperate. You don't have to do this. You're stronger than this. You can help. I paused, my hand on the door, and looked back one last time. They all sat there, watching me, waiting for me to make my choice. I'm done helping, I said, my voice firm. I'll never be your pawn again. I opened the door and stepped outside, closing it behind me. I didn't look back. As I walked away, the weight of the world seemed to lift, even though the storm was far from over. This was the end of one chapter, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to turn the page. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was taking control. The drive back to my marina felt like it took hours, but I didn't care. The words that had been spoken in that room, the accusations, the desperation, none of it mattered anymore. I was done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, and most importantly, done with them. They had shown their true colors, and now it was my turn to show mine. I wasn't just going to walk away from all of this. I wasn't going to let them destroy me and then walk away unscathed. I wasn't the same man who had walked out of that house all those months ago. I had learned to fight for what mattered. And this time, I was going to do it on my terms. The marina was quieter than usual when I pulled in, the usual low hum of activity replaced by the stillness of a place waiting for something. Or maybe I was waiting for something. Riley was already inside, wiping down the counter when I walked in. You okay? She asked, her voice calm but laced with concern. I nodded, a tight smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. I'm fine. Just a lot to process. She didn't press. Riley was good like that. But I could tell she could sense the shift in me. It wasn't just the way I was carrying myself. It was something deeper, a feeling that had settled inside me after everything that had gone down. I've got to go back, I said, my voice lower than I intended. To my old town. To their town. She didn't question me. I get it, she said, looking me in the eyes. What's the plan? The plan. I repeated, almost laughing. I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. I have to. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about ending this once and for all. Riley nodded, her eyes softening. I'm with you. Whatever happens. I felt a weight lift from my chest just hearing her say that. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I had thought. I made the drive back to my old town that afternoon, the air heavy with the realization that I wasn't walking into a reunion, I was walking into the belly of the beast. The place I had tried so hard to forget. But now, it was time to face it. I parked a few blocks away from the house, scanning the familiar streets that once felt like home. The cracked sidewalks, the faded storefronts, the memories. Everything was the same, but I felt like a stranger in it all. I walked into the diner where Emma and I had spent so many nights, the corner booth where we'd talk for hours. The smell of coffee and grease hit me the moment I stepped through the door. The place was quiet, only a few people scattered at tables. The waitress at the counter looked up, her eyes widening when she saw me. "Art?" she asked, clearly surprised. "What brings you back?" "I need to talk to someone," I said, my voice firm. The waitress, someone I hadn't seen in years, nodded and motioned to the back. "You know the place. Go ahead." I made my way toward the back of the diner, toward the private area where I knew I could find someone who might give me the answers I was looking for. And there he was, Alex. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, pulling out the chair and sitting across from him. His eyes were narrowed, like he was sizing me up. "Doesn't matter where I am," Alex replied. "What matters is that you're here." I didn't waste time. I needed answers. I needed the truth. "What's going on, Alex? What's all this about?" Alex leaned in, his eyes sharp. "You're not the only one Emma's family has been using. There's a whole network of people involved in this fraud. It's deeper than you think. Your connection to it? It's more than just a loose tie." "Then why are you telling me this?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "What do you want from me?" Alex's gaze didn't waver. "I want you to help me take them down. I want you to be the one to expose everything. But we have to move quickly. You've been a pawn in this game for far too long." The weight of his words sank in. I wasn't just some victim. I was a part of something that had spiraled into something far worse than I could have imagined. "How do I even start?" I asked, leaning back in the chair. "I'm going to show you how," Alex said, pulling a folder from his bag and sliding it across the table. "Inside are the pieces you need. The documents. The accounts. All of it." I opened the folder, flipping through the pages, my stomach sinking lower with every page I read. It wasn't just Emma's family. It was a network of people, businesses, and corrupt officials all involved in this elaborate scheme. There were connections I didn't even know existed, all pointing back to one thing, a web of lies and manipulation that had been weaved over years. "This is bigger than I thought," I muttered, my mind racing. Alex nodded. "It is. And it's only going to get worse unless we act now." I stood up, pushing the folder back across the table. "All right, let's do it. But I need one thing." "What's that?" Alex asked, clearly expecting something. "I'm not going back to Emma's family," I said, my voice steady. "This is my fight now. I'm done being their scapegoat." Alex smiled, a rare expression on his face. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." I spent the next few days preparing. We made calls, set up meetings, and gathered the evidence we needed. The pieces were falling into place, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose. The day we planned to confront them, I was ready. I had nothing to lose. Nothing except my dignity, my past, and the life I was trying to rebuild. But I wasn't going to let that go easily. I pulled into my old hometown, parked the van a few blocks away from Emma's family's house. I could see them through the windows, gathered around the table, like they had so many times before. But this time, it was different. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and knocked. The door opened, and there they were, standing in front of me. Emma, her parents, her brother. They didn't even look surprised. They probably knew this was coming. "Art," Emma said, her voice cold. "What do you want?" "I'm not here to talk to you," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I'm here for them." Her parents exchanged nervous glances, but I wasn't interested in their discomfort. I was interested in the truth. The whole damn truth. "I'm done being your pawn," I said, staring each one of them down. "And I'm going to make sure you pay for everything you've done." The game was over. The days following our confrontation were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and strategy meetings. Everything had changed in an instant. The weight I had carried for so long, the burden of betrayal, began to lift as I saw the pieces fall into place. Alex had been right. This wasn't just about me or Emma's family anymore. It was about exposing a system of lies that had been built on the backs of people like me, like the townsfolk I had come to know and care about. It was about bringing the truth to light, even if it meant facing down the very people I once called family. I stood in front of the marina, looking out over the still water, the familiar sounds of boats shifting and creaking in the distance. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the docks. It was peaceful. Too peaceful, almost. And I felt like I had one last piece to put in place. Riley had been by my side through everything. She had helped me rebuild the marina, giving me space to heal and think. But today, I could see that something had changed in her too. She was standing next to me, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The past few weeks had shifted something inside both of us, something I didn't have words for yet. But for the first time, I wasn't alone. "You ready?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. "Yeah," I said, turning to look at her. "I'm ready." We made our way to the small office at the back of the marina, where I had a meeting scheduled with the district attorney. The papers were signed, the evidence was in place. Today was the day it all went public. As we walked into the DA's office, I could feel the tension in my chest loosen just a little. The people I had been fighting against were no longer the ones holding all the cards. For once, I was on the other side of the table. "Mr. Harper," the DA said, standing as we entered. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair, a sharp suit, and the kind of face that always looked like he was thinking 10 steps ahead. "Glad you could make it." I nodded, trying to keep my nerves in check. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice." "I've been reviewing the evidence you provided," he said, motioning for us to sit. "It's solid. It's enough to bring charges against your wife's family and several other people involved. We've already begun drafting the subpoenas." I exhaled slowly. It still felt unreal. After everything, the months of running, of hiding from the truth, I was finally going to be able to do something about it, to put an end to it. "Is this really happening?" I asked quietly, looking at Riley for support. "Is this really the end of it?" Riley gave me a small, reassuring smile. "You've already done the hard part. This is just the final step." The DA gave a sharp nod. "Once we get everything in order, we'll be moving forward with the indictments. The insurance fraud, the embezzlement, and whatever else we can tie to these people." "Who else is involved?" I asked, leaning forward, the weight of the question pressing on my chest. "Well," the DA began, "we've got some former business associates of your brother-in-law, people who've been laundering money through various channels. It goes deeper than just your wife's family, but that's where it starts. We're also investigating connections to several local officials who've been taking kickbacks for years. It's a network of corruption." I felt my stomach churn. This wasn't just about Emma's betrayal. It wasn't even about me. This was about years of injustice, years of people using power and money to control others. And now, it was coming undone. "We'll need your cooperation in the coming weeks," the DA continued. "There will be some media coverage, and the public fallout will be significant. But you've made the right choice, Mr. Harper. This is the only way to make sure it ends." "I'm in," I said firmly. "Whatever it takes." A week later, the media storm hit like a tidal wave. The town was abuzz with the news that Emma's family, along with several prominent figures, were being investigated for a network of fraud and embezzlement. The stories flooded the newspapers, the TV stations, and the online outlets. People were shocked. Some were relieved. A few were even vindictive, reveling in the fact that the people who had caused so much damage were finally being held accountable. I tried to keep my head down, working alongside Riley to finish the final touches on the marina. The place was slowly turning into a hub for the town's morning commuters, and I could feel it, a shift in the air. The town wasn't just surviving anymore. It was starting to thrive again. And so was I. Riley had helped me rebuild my business, but more than that, she had helped me rebuild myself. I didn't feel like the same man who had walked into this town months ago, broken and unsure of who I was anymore. I was stronger now, clearer. One evening, after we had closed up for the day, Riley and I sat on the porch of the marina, looking out at the still waters of the lake. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow across the water. It was the kind of peace I had longed for but never thought I would find again. "Look at this place," Riley said softly, her voice laced with contentment. "You really did it." I smiled, feeling a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying fall away. "We did it." She turned to face me, her expression serious for the first time that evening. "I don't know what the future holds, Art, but I do know that whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." My heart swelled at her words, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't even realized I was missing: hope. "I'm not running anymore," I said, my voice steady. "This is my life now. This place. This town. And you." Her smile widened, and she reached out to take my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm glad," she said softly, "because I'm not going anywhere either." The next morning, I stood at the docks, the weight of everything finally lifting off my shoulders. The past was done with me. The future? Well, that was still uncertain, but it didn't feel as daunting as it once had. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. And whatever came my way, I would face it head on. This time, I would be ready. The phone buzzed in my pocket just as I was locking up the marina for the night. I fished it out and glanced at the screen. It was a message from Riley. Can you meet me at the diner in 10? Got something to show you. I stared at the message for a moment, a quiet sense of anticipation rising in my chest. Things had been settling into a comfortable rhythm recently. The marina was starting to thrive, the town was moving forward, and I'd even started to feel a sense of peace I hadn't thought was possible after everything I'd been through. But there was something in Riley's message that hinted at another shift, something new. I threw my jacket over my shoulder and walked toward my truck, the steady beat of my boots on the gravel the only sound in the otherwise quiet evening. The town was peaceful now, the stars starting to twinkle above the lake. There was a sense of finality in the air, like everything had fallen into place. But this one last thing, it kept pulling at me. When I stepped into the diner, Riley was already seated at one of the booths, a cup of coffee in front of her, looking out the window at the night. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held something different from the usual calm. I slid into the booth across from her, giving her a quizzical look. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" I asked, a grin tugging at the corners of my lips. Riley smirked, glancing down at the envelope on the table in front of her. "I was going to, but I thought you'd like to be surprised." My heart skipped a beat. "What is this?" She pushed the envelope toward me, and I hesitated for only a moment before tearing it open. The first thing I saw were official-looking papers, documents, signatures, and a stamp of approval. I glanced up at Riley, who was watching me closely, waiting for my reaction. "What is this?" I asked again, more slowly this time. "It's a legal document," she said, her voice steady but filled with meaning. "I've been talking to some people, doing some research of my own. After everything that happened with Emma's family, I wanted to make sure you were protected. That you didn't have to worry about them trying to come after you or the business again." My mind raced as I read through the papers. It was a trust fund, one that was legally binding, created specifically for the marina and for me, something that would protect the business and my future from any potential attacks or claims from Emma's family or anyone else. I had been so focused on rebuilding my life, I hadn't even considered the legal side of things, the potential for more messes to come. But Riley? She had thought of everything. This is incredible," I breathed, feeling a surge of relief flood through me. "You did this." She nodded, her smile warm and genuine. "I wanted you to have peace of mind. Art. Everything you've worked for here, it's yours. You're not just rebuilding the marina, you're rebuilding your future." I could hardly process the gravity of what she had done, the length she had gone to ensure that I had something secure, something that couldn't be taken away from me. It was a gesture of care, of trust, one I hadn't expected from anyone, least of all myself. I hadn't realized how much I needed this until now. I looked up at her, my heart full. "You didn't have to do this." She cut me off, her expression serious now. "You've been more than fair with me, Art. You've built this place from the ground up. You deserve to have something solid. And I know how much you've lost, but I want you to have something you can hold on to. Something real." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Just know I'm here. For everything. You've got a second chance now. And I'm not going anywhere." The words hit me harder than I expected, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the kind of gratitude that wasn't born from duty or obligation, but from something deeper. A connection. A partnership. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "We've both come a long way." "We have," she agreed, squeezing my hand. "And I think we've earned this." I sat back in the booth, looking at the papers in front of me. I wasn't just free from Emma and her family anymore. I wasn't just the guy who had to fight for a second chance at life. I had one now, with Riley by my side, with this marina as my foundation. And, for the first time in years, it felt like I could finally breathe. The diner was quiet except for the low murmur of the occasional conversation, the clink of silverware on plates. But in that moment, it felt like the world was still. Like everything had finally fallen into place. The door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped inside, the old bartender from the tavern in town, the one who had seen me through the worst of my days. He looked around for a moment before spotting us and heading over with a grin on his face. Well, he said, pulling up a chair. "Looks like you two are in good spirits." I couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, I guess you could say that." Riley leaned in slightly, her voice teasing. "You have no idea how much we've been through to get here." The bartender chuckled, tipping his hat. "Well, it looks like you both earned it. Glad to see it, Art." I nodded, my heart lighter than it had ever been. This place, this town, it had given me a second chance. Riley had given me that chance. And together, we had built something that was solid, something I could count on. I'm finally ready for what comes next, I said, my voice steady. Good, Riley said, squeezing my hand once more. Because we've got a lot to look forward to. And with that, the future didn't feel so uncertain anymore. It felt like home. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and share your opinion about this story in the comments.